Good evening, Ted here. I haven't made a video in probably about 8 months, and so I was reminded of that by my son, and so I think I'm going to go ahead and start making videos again, especially as we approach the 2024 election. So I'm making it at night, so it's a little quieter. Kids are hopefully asleep, and so you may hear them back in the background. So if you wonder what that background noise is, it's most likely going to be my two boys. So the first thing I want to talk about, I was thinking about this today as I was running. Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, running for president. The fact that, I think it was yesterday, he fired a third of his staff. He's apparently blowing through money at a record rate. He can't get new donors because many of the donors have already maxed out their contributions. And today, as I was thinking about that, as I was running, I thought about the fact that one of his staffers, I guess, sent out something with, I think they call it a sonin rod. It's a sun with spokes coming out of it. And it's a Nazi symbol. It's something that, it's a symbol that I'm sure the Nazis expropriated from somebody else. But it's very common in Nazi propaganda and some of the things, I guess, with the SS. When I heard about this, I thought about a few things. First of all, I looked into the young man who had posted this, and I noticed that he's a young guy. Second thing is, he probably has very shallow knowledge of Nazi propaganda and imagery, things of that nature. And it tells you about the kind of people this campaign is hiring now. And also it tells you about the quality of the campaign and the kind of talent they can acquire. The other thing I thought about was Ron DeSantis. And the fact that I knew Ron DeSantis back in 2016 when he was running for Senate. And I was helping him here in Pensacola. When he first visited Pensacola, when I first met him, we were struggling to get people to meet him. It was tough. I think we had 8 people the first time he came here. I couldn't get very many guys to meet him, but he was impressive. There were a lot of things to like about Ron DeSantis. I respected the fact that he was very focused on the Constitution. He was a constitutionalist. He had ideas. He had standards. He was a Navy vet. And that's another thing I thought. I believe veterans, we have an obligation to continue our service to our country. One thing that impressed me was that he had been offered both a pension and a 401k when he entered Congress, and he said none of his constituents gets both. So he turned down the pension. And I thought, this is the kind of guy, this man is different. He's new. He has a different approach. And he seemed focused on, he was grounded in some serious virtue. So he had to drop out of that race, and he re-entered the House of Representatives, and he had to drop out because Marco Rubio didn't get the nomination for president. Donald Trump got the presidential nomination, and so Marco Rubio decided to run for the Senate again. And that tells you about the kind of people we keep electing. I mean, both sides, Democrats and Republicans. There's an entrenched political class in our society. Now, fast forward to 2018 when he's running for governor, which was a bit of a surprise to many of us. But, President Trump really made that campaign happen for Ron DeSantis. And the DeSantis people, they stopped talking to us. It was weird. They just, for about a month or two, there was a group of us here in Pensacola who were helping Ron back in those days. And they just stopped. They weren't calling us or anything. And it was kind of odd. And then, obviously, comes out and says, Matt Gaetz has endorsed Ron DeSantis. And Matt Gaetz and Ron DeSantis are going to drain the swamp together and all this other stuff. I felt a little bit betrayed. Ron DeSantis did not practice the same type of politics that Matt Gaetz practices. Ron DeSantis changed when he lashed up with Matt Gaetz. He began to talk about Amnesty Adam Putnam, who was the other Republican running in the gubernatorial race. It became strident and nasty. You could tell the influence of Matt Gaetz. And so his campaign actually called me, and they asked, "Hey, can you help Ron run for governor? Can you help volunteer?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can't. And I was talking to this young man, the staffer, and I said how, tell Ron that he has sold his soul to Matt Gaetz and the Gaetz machine, and he will regret it. He will regret his relationship with Matt Gaetz. And I was saddened because I remember there's this wonderful movie, A Man for All Seasons, about St. Thomas More. And there's this extraordinary scene at the end, towards the end, when Thomas More, I think Paul Scofield plays Thomas More, if I remember the name correctly. When he realizes that he's been betrayed by his protege, and his protege does so to become the Attorney General of Wales. And he lies. The young man does. And Thomas More says, I think the young man's name is Richie. He says, Richie, you've sold your soul. You've sold your soul for Wales. And Thomas More is sad. You can almost feel, you can feel and hear the sorrow in his voice that this young man has lost his soul in pursuit of power. And I thought about that with Ron DeSantis. I thought, here's a guy who had really good ideas, who seemed to be really grounded in common sense and the Constitution. And now he's running around like Matt Gaetz, practicing a type of politics that this country doesn't need. And I know that this district is not proud of. So, now that he's running for president, there's no surprise here that his campaign is floundering as it is. That it's not getting the top talent. It's running out of money. And I personally believe that Ron DeSantis has betrayed people in the past. And President Trump probably feels like he's been betrayed because he put Ron DeSantis in Tallahassee. And I think when it's all over, President Trump's going to tear him to shreds. Eviscerate him. And I'm sad for him. But I got to think about something else, is that type of politics and that type of, those bargains that people make for power, they don't just stop at the individual seeking office. It can spread. And so I wrote a piece for the Pensacola News Journal. I submitted it to the Pensacola News Journal as a viewpoint, and they didn't publish it. So they publish about half of what I submit. So they didn't publish it. I wrote it back in April. I put it out on Facebook, but I thought tonight I would read it because I just kind of got to thinking about Ron tonight. And feeling kind of sad for him. And so here's the piece that I wrote for the Pensacola News Journal. And this has to do when Florida modified the Resign to Run law. And so Resign to Run says basically, in order to qualify for another office, you have to resign the office you're in. And so if you choose to run for the U.S. Senate and you're currently, say, a member of the state legislature, you have to resign in order to qualify. Well, they made an exception, and that exception is for someone seeking the presidency. So this is the piece that I wrote for the News Journal, and I thought I'd share it with you tonight. As Governor DeSantis prepares to seek the presidency, we should recall Lord Acton's letter to Anglican Archbishop Mandel Creighton. Lord Acton was actually an English Roman Catholic, very famous writer at that time, back in the Victorian era. So, here's the quote. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men are almost always bad men. Even when they exercise influence and not authority, there is no worse heresy than that the office sanctifies the holder of it. End quote. And then my letter continues. I first met Ron DeSantis in 2016. I had a high opinion of Representative DeSantis then and greatly respect him today. But we must not allow power to corrupt the sound laws and traditions of Florida. So what I was alluding to there is the fact that we have our Constitution of Florida was written in 1968. I think it's the 1968 Constitution. And it has some really good laws and rules and standards that have made Florida very successful in the past 50 years. And the fact that, now we're looking at tinkering with that, I'm not cool with that. So, just an aside there. So, power to corrupt the sound laws and traditions of Florida. Esteem for the law must exceed one man's desire for the presidency. In 2007, Florida altered Resign to Run to enable then Republican Governor Charlie Crist to be a potential vice presidential candidate. In 2018, the exception created for Charlie Crist was closed. And we all know Charlie Crist is no longer a Republican. He didn't become governor again. And in fact, governors in Florida who seek high office like the presidency or vice presidency don't do very well. Jeb Bush was destroyed in 2016 by Donald Trump. Ruben Askew, who was an exceptional governor, who's actually from Pensacola, my hometown. He was governor back in the 70s, considered one of the best governors in U.S. history. He ran for president in 1984, I think it was. I think 84. He didn't do very well in the primaries either. So, and of course, Charlie Crist, I don't even know where Charlie Crist is today. But in 2018, the exception created for Charlie Crist was closed. Protecting Resign to Run safeguards three things. First, elected officials exercise a public trust. To run for president while governing a state of more than 21 million people diminishes the trust between those who govern and those who elected them. Elected officials do not govern us. They govern for us, with our consent voiced through our votes. Second, Resign to Run checks absent office holders. Governor DeSantis has embroiled Florida in litigation with Disney that will consume his attention and our government's resources. As a conservative, it concerns me that Governor DeSantis is using state funds and changing established law to express his aversion for Disney. Florida should not do through the law what we as consumers should do with our dollars in the free market. Can an individual continue to exercise Florida's highest elected office, run a national presidential campaign, and navigate a legal morass he has cultivated? In fact, I think about that now because insurance in Florida has just skyrocketed. Everyone's paying higher insurance. Businesses, charities, individuals. Where's the governor? Leaders lead. They should be absent. Third, is it wise to eviscerate Resign to Run to accommodate the political ambitions of one person? If we permit our elected leaders to alter laws they consider inconvenient, then why should we be surprised that an entrenched political class flourishes in Washington and Tallahassee? In 2016, what impressed me about Representative DeSantis was that he opposed the retirement perks of Congress that members of Congress receive. The law must serve the people, not the political class. We Republicans should want Governor DeSantis to resign and run. First, Lieutenant Governor Nunes is a capable leader. Our Lieutenant Governor is Jeanette Nunes. If DeSantis resigns, she becomes governor, as Florida's Constitution directs. In fact, having a Hispanic female as governor sends the right message about the Republican Party and Florida. Second, as Republicans, we uphold constitutional values that preserve the rule and spirit of the law. So let's ask ourselves what our position would be if DeSantis were a Democrat. For our system of government to survive, principles must matter more than personalities. Is it wise to undermine a law and the virtue of limited government it champions? Florida is the third largest state in the Union. Anyone who is effective as Florida's governor, Republican or Democrat, has presidential potential. If we do this today, can we complain when Democrats attempt it tomorrow? Finally, we are citizens of a republic, not subjects of the state. A republic requires robust competition among candidates. Voters deserve clear choices about whom they elect. We should want more people to run, but exempting a governor from Resign to Run insinuates that the governor's office is a backup plan to preserve one's political viability. We should encourage the challenge and contrast Governor DeSantis can offer President Trump. Republicans have strong ideas and a bench of diverse candidates. I want Ron to run, but his candidacy should not come at the expense of laws that protect the wider interests, traditions, and well-being of Floridians. I just think about this, and it goes to the hypocrisy of the political class. The fact that there are people in Tallahassee who voted to exempt Ron DeSantis from Resign to Run, and these are the same people who are going to go back to their districts and pound their chest about how they're not members of the political class, they're not politicians, but yet every one of them, I bet you, has an open bank account to collect money for the next election. So that's the first thing: hypocrisy of the political class. The second thing is it's just the corruption of power. That maybe you can't buy someone's conscience, but you can rent it. Respect for the law, it has to be a virtue. Our republic requires that. Respect for the rule of law. And we also have to respect and honor principles. We have to uphold principles and sound policies. Those things must prevail over politics and the short-term spoils of power. So I just wrote this. I wanted to share it with you tonight. I just got to thinking about Ron DeSantis. And I felt kind of bad for him. And I pray for him. I pray for all those who are seeking high office, any office, anyone who's seeking a position of responsibility and leadership. We should pray for our leaders and their families. But I think he's made a mistake. I think that the state of Florida has made a mistake as well in changing the law. We should support sound policies and principles, not people in politics. So that's my video for this evening. Please comment. Feel free to share your thoughts. Disagree with me. I'd love to hear your opinions and insights. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.